Welcome to Belfast, Wales. My name is Jonathan Watson, and today's guest, or returning guest, is Agi Heale. Agi, as you remember, is a certified professional coach and certified neurolinguistic programming, or NLP practitioner. She has coaching practices in London and Singapore. Agi helps her clients who are feeling overwhelmed cultivate a positive mindset to be calm and confident and make lasting changes for the better. She's written a book, Generation Panic, which we touched on in, if I can remember it, episode 26. Basically, Generation Panic, simple and empowering techniques to combat anxiety. And the book is published by Books and is out at the moment to purchase. So, Aggie, thanks very much for coming back on.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's an honour to be returning. It makes me feel very special.
Thank you. And again, anyone watching this, I recommend if you go back to episode 26, give it a watch. Aggie touched on stuff. I know you touched on a few tips with regards to combating anxiety, and my intention actually is to get that as a clip and release that. So I need to get that done next week. So, Aggie, just to kind of get us started then. In your book, Generation Panic, you talk about masks, and you mentioned masks hide our authentic self. They basically make it difficult to speak up. So I know it can be sometimes if you're in a group and you kind of go along with that group and they're really doing something that you don't feel confident with, but you don't feel brave enough to kind of go, hang on a second, that's not what I want to do. Can you talk more about masks?
Absolutely. So, and that's a really good example of one of like when you're kind of almost kind of caught in this rhythm and you're just trying to keep up and really you're not being very kind of true or honest to what you need or what you want. I think for me, where masks really came from is that I remember when I first came to the working world, like I was fresh out of uni, very green faced, and I was all of a sudden I was trying to improve my public speaking. I was trying to find jobs. I was interviewing. I was presenting. And I remember like consciously kind of putting on my confident hat. And that's what it felt like. And then I'd be able to kind of almost adopt this persona of how I wanted to come across in these situations. But where it became really tricky for me is that those masks actually were incredibly restrictive. And like, if you think of a physical mask, like imagine if I asked you now to like put on a real mask, is, as you said in the question, they're really restrictive. Like they block your speech, they block your face, even though it's completely different. And so actually when we have these masks, they can almost kind of tip over into something far more grotesque. And it doesn't really serve us in any way because it's not honest. It's not being true to yourself. And I found that I was kind of caught in that because I think a lot of people saw me as very confident. I was just struggling, and I couldn't keep up. Well, that's how I felt anyway. But I was just so adamant on like wearing that persona, almost like being that masked person. It was so hard in the end to like take it off. It was so hard.
I think from my own personal experience, I think sometimes you can also put masks on that you don't realize you're putting them on. For example, if you're a victim of bullying or abuse or whatever, certain circumstances that your brain will go, oh, this looks like what we've been through before. So it'll put on more, maybe try and put on a persona of more like to be seen as maybe more defensive or potentially dangerous. Not that you are dangerous or you're intending to harm people, but to maybe a person's given off a certain vibe, like people in the past. So you put on this kind of mask as such that's kind of sending a message to them saying, don't you think of harm me? I'm a threat to you, not the other way around. Which you kind of can fall into. Which can get you into trouble, and also you can become unaware of it. The same thing with being a victim. It would be if again someone who's been bullied or abused, if they meet someone maybe and they go into a new job and that person's kind of similar to people in the past that abused and bullied them, you can kind of fall automatically back into that victimhood, shoulders slumped, head down, and then that person kind of picks up on that and goes, "Oh, I am a predator," or whatever. I can prey on that person. And I know the more famous case, I knew that. I remember here when I was watching the documentary about Jeffrey Epstein, they targeted people specifically with history, a past of where they were abused, so they could then fill that role, that void of the abuser. How do you have any tips or advice on how to be more aware of the mass that we're? I know that's more, I'm kind of tossing more of an extreme end there.
No, I don't think you're tossing an extreme end at all, because it's almost like a foundation of NLP that will be like walking along in our lives and everything's absolutely fine, and then we'll have a moment or an experience and it immediately like transports us back to that, I don't know, 8-year-old you who's struggling in the playground or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden in the present day, you're reacting as though you're the 8-year-old. So like not the most resourceful self suddenly jumps into the present moment. And actually all we need to do is update ourselves that we're safe and we're not under attack and it's not that same situation again. And instead put ourselves back into that, like the kind of Agi or the Jonathan of today back into that. But I think it's a really interesting thing as well, because you've touched upon so many different points of like, there is that thing, you know, when you're in a group and the group mentality and how people are interacting or their energies can have such an impact. You know, if everyone's trying to be really hard, then of course everyone's going to and kind of almost mirror that. And we have mirror neurons. We have that in our brains. So we naturally look to literally mirror other people. So it takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of courage to be very strong and kind of consciously almost kind of step aside from it and then like own the space that you're in, whatever, however that is. And there's so many different things you can do. I mean, even just like connecting with that party that's like a bit wiser, or ignoring, you know, that little voice who's like, oh yeah, I want to join in, or like, I'm going to do that too, or I'm a victim again. You know, all of those little voices that we all have, how can you get past them? And there's a couple of chapters in the book about, first of all, even just having an awareness about those voices, those limiting beliefs, but also how can you like shift the relationship with them? Because usually they're kind of on our side, you know, they're not as awful as we think that they are. And their intention is usually quite positive. They just kind of almost get miscommunicated because you've had that horrendous childhood playground experience. So it's just there to protect you. So anyway, I mean, but you can attack it. You can look at it from many different angles.
Yeah, I know for myself, years ago, I said it's kind of a group of friends, and they kind of, again, I'm not everyone's watching, I'm not judging or being kind of holier now, I'm not, but they kind of went down one path, which was kind of like getting into drugs and stuff like that there, and that's fine. But I found, because I was doing martial arts, and because I was kind of under this really good high level coach, I found the pull to the martial arts was stronger, and that kind of made you kind of, gave you kind of a fortitude, or it gave you confidence to kind of go, no, I don't want to go down that path. Obviously, me wanting to go the other way, or me not fitting in with the group, potentially create a split, which eventually kind of, they went their own way, I went my own way. Eventually, the kind of the phone stopped slinging and stuff like that. Which again, if you're under that kind of peer pressure, it can put like a lot of pressure to go, oh, maybe well, but I think if you have something that's strong, or a strong direction you want to go, I think that helps essentially. Kind of, it kind of keeps you on the path that you want to set. I think it,
I love that.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think if the bigger picture and the bigger kind of direction of travel that you want to be going in is bigger than what you're in, that's enough of a kicker. And you know, that's kind of almost a principle of life, is that no one will change something until there's enough of a like push or pull factor. So even if you take something like, I don't know, losing weight, usually people get to a point, like there's a point when they're out of breath running after a kid, or there's this moment that they have a kind of scary doctor's appointment. And that's almost the kicker that kind of creates that goal. And that's kind of no different to you. It sounds like there was enough of a goal, there was enough of something that you were striving for, that it made it okay to step out and away from it. But I mean, I go back to, I think it takes a huge amount of courage, because it's scary, you know, it's hard to step away from people. And I think innately we all want to be kind of liked and loved. And so to kind of consciously move away and actively like turn off one part of friendship takes a lot of guts. So I take my hat off to you that you were able to do that.
Yeah, I said hopefully again it's funny that I said kind of we're a massive. I remember meeting a guy called Rory Coleman. He's like an ultra runner. He's based in Cardiff, and kind of this is long before Belfast Whale came about. But he was talking about, in a way, talking about mass, and he was a recovering alcoholic, and he talked about the mask he wore, but he didn't use that word, but he just said kind of like, how did he describe it? It was almost like he wore he was playing a role like an actor, and he was kind of highlighting that, and he was kind of like, I think he was kind of sussing me out, and he's saying like he would make you stand in front. Part of his training, which was really weird, make you stand in front of a mirror and kind of build your confidence up, which is kind of awkward because you're in this busy gym. People are kind of like, what are they doing? But I think that you touched on the mask. I thought was really, really good. I think it's something that we really don't. I think sometimes it's easy to forget. We can put these masks on effortlessly, but it's almost like if you drive for a number of years, you eventually just drive to work on autopilot, even if you're half asleep. It's almost like that with the mask. You see a group of people that you maybe meet every so often, like maybe in work. So when you put that certain work face on, and you come home, put a home face on, and it's very easy to kind of fall into that and not be aware.
Yeah, and I think they can happen in the smallest moments, you know, like you just said, it with a work colleague or something, or, you know, bumping into someone who you kind of vaguely know. Is that, and I even sometimes do this today, I'm like almost kind of like, whoa, and I jumped into like, whoa, and I'm like, where? Come away from it, and I'm like, why? Like, I had no need to do that. That wasn't necessary. That wasn't required. And actually, I should have just like taken a breath and recentered myself, and just gone forward like a normal human being. I think also a big part of this that I think is important to mention is that your gut intuition is really strong on the whole. Like, if you can actually locate where your gut is and where that intuition sits in your body and connect with it and listen to it, most importantly, that will tell you what you need to know. Because I guarantee if we went back to your younger self and with those guys, I bet there was a part of you that was like, this just doesn't feel right. And this is not like my true people, and this is not my real path that I'm meant to be on. I'm kind of destined for better things. And again, it's like being able to tune into that and listen to it, act on it, do it. But we've all got a gut intuition, and I think that's a really big part, like locating where your gut is and how it speaks to you, because it will speak. It'll tell you exactly what you need to know. Well, I believe anyway.
No, definitely. I find my gut instinct's quite strong. I do have to admit, I do ignore it from time to time, or like recently, I'll not bore people with the details, but in work, my gut was kind of telling me something, and I was kind of like, oh, you're being paranoid, it's in your head. And then kind of a few hours later, kind of like, I got the kind of evidence to kind of back up what I was feeling about a certain situation. But it's kind of like, I always try and listen to it, but sometimes when you do listen to it, and the right outcome comes from that, you end up getting that wee voice going, was that the right thing? But it was. I think it's just sometimes where the brain maybe doesn't like taking a second seat, taking a back seat in that instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all have it. We've all got these. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you've seen the film Inside Out, but you know, we've got all these voices in our head. It's a kid's cartoon about The way they describe it is you've got different emotions in your head, like joy and sadness, and they're kind of almost like these little characters. And it's kind of no different to us, like almost these saboteurs, these gremlins. There'll be a character. Your kind of wisest, best part of you is also another character, and it's basically how they all have a little party in your head all the time, and like commenting or passing their opinion. You know, your intuition might be another little character in there. And so for your listeners, maybe it's about how you can tune into that. I mean, maybe I've gone too wacky, but yeah, anyway, food for thought.
No, I think it's good to kind of be aware, because your gut will, even sometimes if you see somebody, like someone acting strange in your neighbourhood, it might not be given off too much, but it might just be enough. Your gut will go, got a bad vibe with that person, or kind of there's something a bit untoward there. Kind of obviously moving on with, again, this is from your book Generation Panic, and this is kind of a follow-up interview from episode 26. Boundaries, and I know we did touch on them. How do you define boundaries without coming across confrontational? And again, this can be in a workplace, it could be even family, or even friends. I think sometimes there's certain people who will I think these kind of people have only met few and far between. Sorry, the doorbell's went there. Apologies with that.
That's right.
Sometimes, basically, with boundaries, certain people can actually infringe on it, and they can do it. They can almost do it like with a smile, like almost like what people call the smile assassin. So they kind of like, they know they're crossing the line, but they're doing it with a smile to kind of get away with it. How have you been able to define boundaries, again, without coming across as aggressive or confrontational?
Great question. And I think you said kind of even family or even friends. You know, I would actually argue that that's probably the hardest, but the most important place to start, and where often a lot of conflict can come from. So I would kind of urge you to can almost say not even family, but like absolutely family, absolutely friends. So the first thing on boundaries is like understanding what your boundaries are. And boundaries are quite simply like understanding what the parameters are of what's very important to you. And so quite often, if people aren't aware of what their boundaries are, it can be really good to think about when they've been really pissed off, like when they've got frustrated about something, you know, like perhaps a family member said something to them, or a meeting's been put in at this time, or whatever it might be. But if you're struggling to work out where they are, look for where the reaction is, because it's usually quite a good indicator of essentially like one of your values being stepped on. And when you get to that point, that's kind of like the juice that you want to hold on to, and then think about, okay, so if this is like the value that I want to protect, or this is the thing that really annoyed me, what would then be the boundary off the back of that? And they can be really small. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. You know, if you want to eat dinner at 6 o'clock every night, but knowing that that's important to you is kind of almost the first step. If you have the awareness that that is something that makes a real difference to your day, and if you eat at 10 p.m. at night, that's going to just frustrate you, that's kind of important knowledge. So therefore, if you're then going to like a family dinner where everyone's like sitting down at 9:30, that might be a problem. And so then it's about either communicating that, or being flexible enough to let it go. You know, those are ultimately the two decisions. Or obviously option 3, like get really annoyed, hold on to it for ages, take it, you know, like, oh, I'm never going to forgive them, they've completely messed me around. So I'm a huge believer in communicating your boundaries. And I think, I mean, there's been tons of studies, in particular in the workplace, about how conflict is, I think it's like 75-80% of conflict is based on miscommunication. And it's ultimately like miscommunication around what we need, or how we want to work, or how we want to operate. And so I actually even had this with someone the other day. So I'm a bit of a like preparer. Like I like to know where I'm at. I like to be on top of things. If I've got something big coming up, I like to be prepared and like have had my time to really kind of run through it and feel like it's kind of in my bones. And I was working with this person who just would leave everything to the 11th hour. And it was so stressful for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just getting this reaction. We're meant to be presenting tomorrow on this huge workshop. And like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm sure she doesn't know what she's doing. And so it had to take a conversation, and it was hard. And it was more along the lines of, actually, do you know what? This is really important to me. Like, this is why I work the way that I do. This is what it gives me. And therefore, like, how can we kind of find together a good way to move forward? And a key part of this is obviously listening to the other side and like hearing what their thoughts are. It's not just like a one-way conversation. I remember even having this with my parents. You know, we had moved, I'd gone to live with them while I was delivering my son, and for a whole host of reasons. I'm in Singapore, but I was delivering back in the UK. But it was important for me to be like, actually, this is the way I kind of do things, and these are the things that are really important to me. But also, I appreciate I'm coming into your space. So what are your boundaries for me? You know, if I kind of, I don't know, roll in at 11:30 in the morning in a pair of tracky bums, is that gonna annoy you? I don't know. So it's all down to communication. I think it's the delivery and making sure that it's not an attack, but a conversation of how you can both together find something that like honors both of you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long rant, but yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, no, definitely. 'Cause I think the worst thing, and I've been guilty of this myself, is kind of letting things build up. It's almost like you're collecting things, and almost like a slot machine. You keep taking and you're storing this up, and then maybe something the person's completely unaware, or maybe they are aware, but they're not bothered by it, and all of a sudden you have this big. I've done this, unfortunately. I had the big massive blowout, and you see the person kind of go, "Whoa, okay." I think it is that kind of. I think mentally, when you're trying to establish a boundary and someone keeps infringing that, I think there's a fear there of the confrontation. So you kind of that wee voice goes, oh, let it go, and it builds up, and then eventually you get angry at yourself. I've let this go for the past year, and then just have that big massive blowout. And I think it's the same thing with. I know we're talking about interpersonal, like work and stuff like that, and family, but I think even in more serious setting, I think I see this. I work in a public leisure centre, and I see people who, or I've seen people who've let certain people do things that are borderline illegal, kind of thing, like and basically they don't set boundaries, and these individuals kind of keep doing it because they're literally going, I've been given a green light. They kind of see it as a green light. How would you normally kind of so what I'm trying to get to is how would you kind of if you were going to confront someone who's maybe being more now, and you felt they were maybe being a wee bit like vindictive, how would you handle that compared to obviously maybe like a work colleague or something? He's maybe just their working methods are maybe causing them to have issues than someone who's kind of knowingly going, I'm doing this to now that individual. What's the best way to kind of tackle that?
So I think you've touched upon a really important point, that in those moments you make assumptions that they either know that it's a problem and that they care but maybe aren't doing something about it. You know, we kind of create all these stories in our head. And I think to your point, so it's a question about like how you would handle almost like a more hostile person on the receiving end.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of things. I think I would try and put myself in the best state to have that conversation. So whatever I needed to do to feel calm, confident, like I'm not going in to have a confrontation, but I'm ready to have an open conversation to let you know where, not make assumptions, but let you know actually what's frustrating me. Because you're right, those things do build up. It's like a little scratch on your windscreen and you just think, oh, it's just like a little scratch. But actually, if you keep doing more and more and more, you can't see out, you know, the whole thing shatters. And so I think I always encourage people that even if they feel uncomfortable, finding the way to do it that feels safe for them so that they don't have that mega blowout, which is where we all get to, because it's just like, why have you not listened, or you don't understand. But of course they don't understand because they don't know. So taking a deep breath, really clear, again, I mean, as I've just said, I'm a preparer, so I would write down what I wanted to discuss and what was really important for me to get across to them. You know, you can do that in any way that feels comfortable to you. Like, these are the top 3 points I want them to know, or this is the one key takeaway that I want to get out of this meeting, or this is the resolution that I'm hoping to get to. But being really specific and clear on your intention going in, put yourself in the best state, and then just try and be as open as possible. I think those conversations go wrong when everyone kind of like gets their fisticuffs up and like everyone's a bit like, you know, defensive and trying to take the other person down. But if you can just kind of almost, hey, we're here, like this is important.
Suppose put your ego aside. Because I think that's what causes a lot of problems. The ego kind of sits there and it's like, you letting him get away with it, and their ego's going, you letting him get away with it, and then lines everybody up.
But people don't know what they don't know. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, I think we assume that they understand our perspective, our version of reality, like the way that we're seeing it, and you know, things that are just like, of course I'd want to eat dinner at 6 o'clock. Like, how on earth could you eat dinner at 10? But actually, if you go and stand in the other person's shoes, they'd be like, oh my gosh, why are you eating dinner at 6? It's so early. You know, they can't, both sides almost can't comprehend where the other one's coming from. And so if you can either step into their shoes kind of in preparation or thinking about how they might be looking at the same problem, or asking them, you know, it's communication of like understanding what the other person has. And often there's still value in their way of doing things. It's just not necessarily your way. It might just feel very different to what you're used to. It's almost like, I don't know whether you've seen that diagram of a 6 on the floor, and one guy is standing from one side and they can see a 6, and then the other one standing from the other end and they see a 9.
Yeah.
You know, both would be convinced, they would fight to the nth degree that they saw a 6 or a 9. You know, that's kind of like boundaries a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, because I think one of the things, and I think this should be, I'm a big believer in I think education itself, especially in the UK, needs to be reformed. I'm not saying, oh, I know it all, but I just feel there's things lacking. And I think communication is one. I think we're not taught, yes, we're taught English and grammar and understand literature like Shakespeare, things like that. But I think one of the things that's missing is being able to effectively communicate. Because I find sometimes, again, I've been guilty of that kind of blowing up at a situation and people are kind of like, why is he angry? What's that about? But then when I kind of switched frames and explained, they kind of they had a different impression of why I was angry compared to what I was really genuinely angry for. And you can see them going, oh, I see where you're coming from now. Oh yeah, I actually agree with you on that. But it was just my communication wasn't great. I was building up, and then when you have a big blowout, your communication effectiveness goes down. So I think it's a skill that we all need to kind of develop. I think communication is like a forgotten skill. It's almost an essential skill that's kind of left behind.
I completely agree. And just kind of almost caveat all of this is that I think we can be so intent on everything being a perfect communication, and that you just articulate everything so wonderfully, and then you get to this perfect resolution and everyone's holding hands and skipping off into the rainbow sunset. And like often that's not the reality of it, and that's okay. It might be messy, it might be hard, it might be really challenging conversations, it might be you might lose things, you might lose a friendship or a relationship or whatever it might be. And so almost, to give yourself permission as well to kind of try around and play around with it and see what works. But I think life is genuinely easier when you feel clear, when you know that you've spoken about these kind of things and you don't have that kind of, because it's like that resentment that builds up and blows. And I've totally been there too. But it's just not a great feeling. Even outside of those like actual relationships in your everyday life, they're kind of like they niggle, right? It's like, oh, why did they do that to me? Like, and that's just like, if you can have one hard conversation to be rid of that, or one conversation that you might not land perfectly, but has kind of at least said what you think or feel, totally worth it. Totally worth it. And also, I mean, you can, like often before I have a challenging conversation, I'll definitely prepare with my coach or something, and just kind of be ready for it. Preparation is such an important part, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, and that kind of leads into what we're going to go into next. I think if you have someone you can kind of say, look, so and so's doing this, I want to speak to them. How does this sound? You can sound off someone who's neutral. Again, kind of go, sounds a bit wrong, or they can kind of sculpt you in that way, or help you prepare. Again, back to the book. Basically, you talk about a safe person. What is a safe person? It kind of ties into what we just were talking about there.
So for me, my safe person at the time when I was really struggling with panic attacks was my husband, or my fiance at the time, because he just knew me well. Like he knew that I was kind of out of sorts, that I was feeling really wobbly, like even walking into the office every day was like a lot of energy and effort, even just to kind of physically get in there. But that safe person for two ways can kind of be really beneficial. One is they can obviously like hold you to the best person that they know you can be. So it's not like you don't slip into that almost that victim mentality of like, this defines me and this is all I'm about now, and my anxiety is just like all consuming. Instead, it's like someone saying, no, you're really awesome. Like, I know you're brilliant. It's okay where you are, and kind of help almost like lift you out of those situations. But the other thing that I really loved about my husband at the time, and why the safe person felt important, is that I really needed someone in those actual moments to like ground me, because I can't remember exactly how much I kind of shared in the last one, but when I was having a panic attack, I mean, I was like gone, like my mind was kind of shut off. I didn't feel like I could make decisions. My body felt like it was in meltdown. My heart rate was through the roof, palms sweating. I felt like I was going to pass out. And having that safe person of someone that he was just a person that I would call, who would be able to calm me down and remind me of the things that I needed to remember when, like, essentially my kind of rational brain had done a complete runner, was really helpful, and was for me personally like a transformational, and continues to be. Like if ever I'm feeling apprehensive about something, I'll just talk it through. It's someone who's like, no, I know you can do this. Like, remember that one you nailed, and you did so great at this, and call them 5 minutes before that, and I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's good if you have someone you can kind of like sound off, or confide in something. Like that. It kind of, I suppose it's like the old saying, if I remember this right, it's like, was it the load shared is, or load carried, something like that.
It's a load halved or something.
Halved,
is that
something
right?
like that. Something like that.
Yeah.
We changed it, but
yeah.
It
is. It's right. Like, I think the power of company is really important. And I remember as well, when I was really struggling, I remember feeling incredibly alone. Like, I remember feeling that everyone else was just so put together and I was the only one who was really struggling. And actually, yeah, in that time, I felt very isolated. So having someone who was actually aware of how I was feeling and able to support me, and also kind of another one of the chapters is about comfort zone and like finding this sweet spot of like re-energizing and resetting in your comfort zone, but also pushing yourself out. That he was also a good person for that. He was like, just, you know, just go, like, get out the door, like go and try that, go do that. So maybe I would have played it a bit safer if I hadn't have had him.
Yeah. Going kind of deviate a wee bit, and it's just a question that I have fast, and it kind of came into my head. How would you, like, if say, for example, someone has a lot on, which I think is probably everybody, but if you have a large, overwhelming, massive to-do list, you maybe the anxiety levels maybe running maybe up and down, maybe up and down like that there. What's the best way to kind of deal with that? Because I know people kind of, you meet people all the time now actually who've got massive to-do list, so much to do, but they feel like they're not going forwards, or more like a hamster wheel, just going around in a circle. And you can see their anxiety kind of going up and down, and like a yo-yo. How do you kind of break that so you can actually move forward in the direction you want to go in, and not just spinning plates forever?
And I totally get that. You know, it's something that clients come to me for again and again. It's absolutely where I've been. I still can definitely fall victim to a to-do list. And I, you know, that feeling it's like well, for me anyway, it's like my stomach drops out and I'm like, oh no, this, like, how on earth am I going to get to the bottom of this? So for anyone who's struggling with that, you're absolutely not alone. There's a number of different things that are going on there. I think boundaries, as we've already discussed, you know, being clear on what you are able to do and what you're not able to do, and then being able to communicate that out. One of the biggest things that is almost like recurring with people with massive to-do lists is they say yes to everything. So like someone says, oh, hey, can you jump on this project? Or hey, can you just get this memo over? Or can you drop an email to this person? Yep. And actually being able to say no, and respectfully and confidently, and for the right reasons, is a really critical part of that. It's kind of almost tied up very closely with boundaries, because, for example, in a work setting, if you know that in your day job, you have this large project to do, if you're very clear on that, you're very connected with that goal, almost like we were saying before with the boundaries, you're very connected on where you're heading and what's needed, actually it becomes easier to say no to this side project that really isn't getting into that. But being clear on those boundaries is really important. The other thing is, I mean, again, you could tackle this so many different angles, but the other one that's just popped into my head is just procrastination comes into everything, and it's kind of back to those voices in your head. You know, some people like the to-do list because it gives them a nice like dopamine hit when they tick off the thing, and it's like that kind of rush of adrenaline that makes them feel really good and wanted. Or, you know, there's just so many reasons why people procrastinate or have big to-do lists. And if you can get to the real heart of that, which can be hard work, but why are you in the position that you're in? Like, do you want to feel good about yourself? Do you want to feel like you're important? Is it your ego wanting to be worthy? I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, if you're struggling with that, work with a coach and they can really drive in or dive into why you're doing what you're doing. Because we can put a band-aid on it metaphorically, but like, unless you really kind of treat the root, I don't know, it's just going to keep cropping up. I'll talk to you in 5 months and you'll have another big to-do list.
Yeah, because this actually is falling nicely in the next one, because we do have that I think, and I'm gaining this from my own self, I find you have your kind of your best self. So there are days that you'll be literally firing all cylinders, and you'll reach the end of the day with real satisfaction, gratification for what you've achieved, what you've done, and you're like almost like pat in the back. Then you have those days or even weeks or months where it's kind of like the dualistic side of you. It's more like the saboteur side. It's kind of made you late to get things done. Kind of that old voice goes, "Oh, do it tomorrow," and then do it tomorrow, and it keeps going on. I know you talked about this in your book. I know you have obviously kind of highlighted on what I'm talking about. What is your best self, and how can you find it, and how can our best self help us against our saboteur self? Just kind of two questions for them there.
I love what you say though, because it's so true. And just on that point of having like really good days and really bad days, is that it depends almost how long or in what form those bad days take. Because I think even personally, sometimes I'll have a bad day and I'll like kick myself, I'll be like, oh, this is so frustrating, like, why am I in such a funk today? And actually, when I look back, I should have just almost like given into it and just had like one of those days and just written it off. Not every day needs to be like the highest level of excellence, because I think that that's where I got to, and it just kind of created this level of anxiety that I was just desperate to kind of keep up. And actually, like, there are going to be days that we don't feel good. We're totally normal. We're human beings. Like, so many things can influence that. And the other, I appreciate I haven't answered your question yet, but the other thing is that if we get really curious about why those things are happening, that can also be really interesting. So if you've had like an awesome day when you've woken up 15 minutes earlier or later, or you've had a breakfast or not, or you've had an exercise, or you've spoken to this person, or you commuted in, or you walked in, 3,000 gazillion reasons, and no one else can tell you what they are for you. But if you look at like the days when you're having a good day and look for the themes, then you can try and take some of that goodness and like put it into, so if you're having a funky, not great few week or whatever, you could be like, actually, do you know what? I know it makes me feel really good when I meet some of my best mates for a coffee or whatever, or a pint, or I go for a run, or I don't know, I talk to my boss and reconnect with why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't know, 3,000 reasons again. So to your question, your best self. So I actually do a visualization with clients that, in short, it just connects you with that kind of wise and compassionate part of you. And it can be human or animal with a physical form or not. It can be like, I've had oak trees, I've had sunshine, I've had like older versions of themselves, younger versions, people they know, animals, the whole lot. But almost back to that kind of gut intuition, there is that part of you that kind of is wise and like knows that everything is going to be okay. And once you have that, like once you know what that is, if you can represent it in some way, whether that's like a painting, a picture, a song, an object, a post-it note, I don't know, anything, and then obviously put it where you remember it. Because if you can connect with that part, a lot of my clients, like I'll encourage them to put this up on like their desks or in their mirror where they're brushing their teeth, and so that they, like they start their day and they see a picture of an oak tree and it's like, yeah, I'm ready for a day. Or someone's got like a dolphin on their desk and they're like, yes, I can bring that energy into what I'm doing. I can picture myself as a 90-year-old woman, and that's, that's what I need. So again, it's just about, all of these things are not rocket science. They are all about awareness and like being able to access them and pull them when you need it. Again, that's kind of where the safe person helps, is that they are that reminder when it's harder. They could be like, oh, remember your best self. Like, remember that part of you that knows that you're going to be all right.
Yeah, because I think sometimes even when you're doing things, sometimes even, this came up recently. I was watching another video and they were talking about people's backstories, and kind of I could connect to it myself. And there's times where if you just kind of go to hell with it and just kind of whatever happens, happens. I feel like you get a better outcome of doing that than going in and almost gripping tightly. I have to make sure this goes well. And there's a really good story. Harrison Ford got a call from his agent, and he pretty much said, "There's a up and coming director wants you to do a film, but you're not being casted. He just wants you in there to read the script, to kind of interact with the people who are going to be looked at. But just remember, there's no job in this. You'll get maybe a few dollars and that's it." So he showed up and says, "Look, just making sure you're not being casted. We're not interested in you whatsoever. You're going to be here for the whole day, read the script, and then go home, and that's it." So he was reading through the script, and he kind of, I think from his own kind of recollection, was that he just didn't care, was being sarcastic and all. But by doing that, just being himself, not caring, being sarcastic, and they were like, "Whoa, that's the kind of character we're looking for." Next he ran out and says, I think he's about to go out and says, "Look, no, we want you in the movie. You're the guy we've been looking for." So it's kind of, sometimes, bizarre as that sounds, sometimes just be let go and just go, "Do you know what? I'll do whatever I do," and that's it. And I think sometimes there's a power in it that we kind of, by letting go, you can kind of bring your best self to the fore, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, because you just take the pressure. I was speaking with a client the other day who had gone for an interview that was like way too senior for them. They're never going to get it. Like, it's at an amazing company that just probably wouldn't be interested in their like small time background, you know, blah, 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 blah. You can hear the saboteur going. And they were like, "Oh, I'm not even going to bother preparing. I'm just going to try and get some practice." Anyway, not obviously nailed the job, got the job, because it was almost like that release of energy. And there's even a chapter in Generation Panic that is called Learn to Love It. And I think, and I found this as well, like I spent so much of my time like desperately not trying to have anxiety, you know, like desperately fighting to feel really good. And actually, when I kind of almost like kind of flopped back into it and just like trusted and kind of rode the wave metaphorically, or even made it like bigger and better, actually it kind of had a run rate. It was more like that I was so scared that it was going to take over, or I was so worried that it was going to lead to a panic attack in a situation I couldn't get out of. That kind of drove it more. Whereas as soon as I was like, I mean, I'm trying, but I can't control that. You know, I just have to kind of almost like trust that I'm going to be all right, and learn to love it. You know, there's lots of positives to all these things.
Yeah. It's does it say what the film that he was auditioning for, that was Star Wars. He was a carpenter at the time, and just couldn't get a big break. And just when I listen to that story, just that kind of letting go. I've been in situations where kind of you're going in high stress, you know, people will be watching you, and just be going, "Do you know what? I actually don't care." I've kind of remember doing a seminar. I was training, and the head coach came in and said, "That's really good. Really good technique." And you're kind of like, "Oh, I felt like I'm not trying. I don't care." But yeah, whereas if you're all stressed, I have to make this look good. It's bizarre. Like, so the thing is, because that's, you're, by letting go, you're getting out of your own way and just going, look, like a child, look, just go and play, do whatever you want, and that's it. Whereas if you're kind of hovering over your child, no, do this, do that, you're constraining that kind of flow. I suppose obviously going into the kind of next thing, recognizing success, and I think that's something that we don't do enough. We've all had people, or we all known people who've achieved something really amazing or good, got the job, or whatever. Sorry, pardon me. And you all, congratulations, well done. They're like, oh, kind of bring themselves down. How important is it to recognise our success? And you mentioned the wheel of life. What is it, and how can it help, basically, in recognising success?
I mean, celebrating your success is just such a key part of it that I think is completely lost on like today's current world on the whole. You know, people strive for something and they get there and it's just like, great, on to the next mountaintop. You know, I'm just going to crack on and I'm not even going to pause and really acknowledge like what I've done well. And actually, when you stop and you take the time and like digest and think about what you're really proud of and things you might do differently next time or things that you've learned, but like there's such moments in there that can be celebrated. And you know, the celebration doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be like, you know, swanky dinners with champagne, but like, oh, I'm going to give myself a lion tomorrow. I'm going to go buy a nice chocolate bar. I mean, those kind of moments feel really sweet. I mean, literally, but like they, you know, they feel like, oh, I've really achieved something. But I think it's a huge problem with our culture because it's the pressure of everyone else as well. You know, even when I'd finished writing Generation Panic, and often the first question I got was like, okay, so when's your next book? Or like, what's your next idea? And I was like, oh my God, I've just written a whole bloody book. Like, can I just breathe maybe? And so, yeah, it can take quite a lot of like strength to be like, no, do you know what? I'm just going to have a gin and tonic tonight and say like, well done. I'm really proud of that and owning that. I think people find that also a real struggle to be like, no, I did really do that well. Or like, I was a key part of that initiative, or I think I handled that conversation really well. But I mean, that's how we just become better, don't we?
Yeah.
As humans.
And the Wheel of Life, I know that's, again, this is from your book. What is that, and how can it help us obviously achieve or allow us to recognize success?
So Wheel of Life is it's a super simple concept. You can Google it. It's all over the internet, so you can get the framework. But essentially, you have a pizza pie, or a circle with 8 different parts of it, and you can label the 8 different parts whatever feels most important to you. So like the kind of regular ones are things like money, health, relationships, career, self-development, those kind of things. And what I love about Wheel of Life is that it's the kind of technique, I guess, that you can return to again and again. So today you might sit down and go, right, okay, my money's at 4 and my relationships are at 9 and my health is at a 2 and my career prospects are at a 7. I don't know, whatever they are. And what's important, it's not like where you want it to be, it's where they actually are. So it's again like trusting that kind of gut intuition in you. But the next stages of that are like, okay, but what would a 10 out of 10 look like? So if I was 10 out of 10 on health, what would be happening for me? Would I be, I don't know, for you and I, we would define that very differently. You might say I'd run an ultra marathon, and I might say I would just feel good walking down the stairs. I don't know. Yeah. So defining what that means to you, and then coming up with 3 things that you can do to get you close to that. And what's important is that at least one of them needs to be within the next, 24 hours, just so that it starts that momentum. Because I mean, so often we have these great ideas and we do all this brainstorming, but like, where does the rubber hit the road? So if on health, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start with a 3-minute walk tomorrow. Actually, that's going to make you probably feel quite good. And then celebrating along the way and sharing that, connecting with the big picture. But Wheel of Life's great because it's a wonderful tracker of how you're doing over an extended period of time. Because if, for example, your relationships were at a 9 and then, I don't know, you do the Wheel of Life again in an hour, a day, a week, a year, a month, whatever, and it's dropped to a 2, it's like, okay, well, what are the things that I can control that would up it a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think that's a good wee kind of, almost like a barometer of kind of gauging where you are in your life and kind of, I suppose, allowing you kind of set course over kind of like straight off course, like a ship, go kind of so many degrees off course, get back on track. Mm-hmm. No, I like that sort of thing. That's one of the reasons why I want to bring it in. Again, I think this is really good one. I know it's been touched on, the likes of Jocko Willink. He had that whole video called Good. It kind of went into really bad things happening to you. But it's about, you talk about this in your book as change your perspective. And I think this is really, again, there's a lot of stuff we're talking about here. It's kind of, I know watching it's kind of go, well, that's kind of obvious. I kind of knew that. But yeah, you knew it, but we don't apply it. We don't. I think sometimes changing perspective, it's easy to kind of fall into poor me, poor me. And I think I would even argue, and I've said this to a lot of people, our culture today has lost perspective of how far we as a civilization has came. My gran, I was one of my gran talking about her young brother died of tuberculosis when she was a child. And she said that, I remember saying, you're so lucky that you live in the world today, because there's a lot of kids with rickets, disease, and you used to see like deformities all around. But now with better nutrition, better medication, all that, I think it's easy to lose perspective when without kind of comparing it to what it was. Obviously, this is relating to anxiety. How can you get a different perspective when you're deep in the valley of anxiety? And how important is the change of scenery, a change of scenery?
To start almost the opposite way around, I think it's really important, because particularly for myself, I felt like I just couldn't see, all I could see was my anxiety. It was like right in front of my face. And it was very difficult to see how someone else would be thinking about it, or be able to just like give myself some relief or look at it from a new angle. So I think it's really critical. What I would advise people to do is to read that chapter, because it flows, like it's easier to follow. But a couple of principles are even like literally stepping into other people's shoes. So whether that's like a 2-year-old's opinion, or I mean, anyone, like Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Barack Obama, your favorite Lady Gaga, who, I mean, it doesn't matter, but like to even physically kind of move and step to one side and say, like, okay, as Bon Jovi, first person who popped into my mind, Bon Jovi, like, how would Bon Jovi approach this? Or like, what's his opinion? Or how would he view this situation? What would be his advice? And like, even try and embody them, because you know, as we know, when we feel anxious, like our shoulders can hunch up, like everything just feels really tight. And it's amazing how when you stand to one side, you're like, hey, I'm going to be Daffy Duck, like everything like changes. And that in itself is kind of fun to play around with. But yeah, there's a couple of different things. You can change your perspective even by like imagining you're able to kind of zoom up high in the sky, or you're a bird or in a helicopter and can kind of see the whole thing. I don't know. It's just kind of getting out of that stuckness.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's weird how perspective kind of, sometimes you go through maybe a year or certain events, and all, as you say, all you can see is it's literally like a very small circle around you. Then maybe fast forward 5 years from there, you look back and you go, oh, yes, that was bad, that was traumatic, but that was good. That kind of got me to where I am now. There's almost like it served the purpose. I think it's the same kind of thing. What do you call it? With negatives to positive. Sometimes maybe you're stuck in a bad, toxic work environment, but that served the purpose in kind of getting you up off your bum and kind of applying for new jobs, and maybe you end up working in an industry that you absolutely love, but it wasn't for that previous job, you would never thought of applying for, just because you had the desperation to get out of where you are. How would you recommend people to flip negatives into positives? I know, as you mentioned, about almost like being high up and kind of taking like a broader view of the situation.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, that's one way that you could approach it, connecting with your best self, but also what you were just mentioning, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, it's far easier to connect the dots. And it's not about like being a Pollyanna, but I do believe that things kind of work out. Like, it can feel really hard at times. It can feel incredibly challenging, very lonely, like you're never going to get through it. But actually often they, like you said, when you can look back and see, okay, well, that led to that, or that made me realize how I didn't want to do something or didn't want to be managed because I had the most horrendous manager. And I think that's a kind of positive, is as we grow older, is that there's more trust in like things happening for a reason. I don't know whether that's getting too woo-woo, but like, I just think that things kind of work out. And, even of thinking of Generation Panic, at the time, I honestly, I thought I was in the hardest, darkest place that I could possibly be, which I absolutely was, but I couldn't see A, how I'd get out of that, and B, like, wildest dreams, was this ever going to be something positive for me? And like, look at me now. I just, like, I couldn't have predicted where I would have got to. And so, all of those experiences now, like if I was to face another really challenging moment, I would have that life experience in its entirety to know that, like, I don't know, there's a natural flow to life.
For me, at the moment, I'm going back into education, and my experience of education, primary school education, love primary school. I feel actually I got a really good primary education, and weirdly I remember most of the stuff I learned. But high school was horrendous, which I touched on in the previous video. But I kind of came away with that, and I think this is very important as well. I came away with my perspective in education wasn't my perspective. It was given to me by, again, not all teachers, but some of the bad teachers. And they kind of imprinted that bad perspective on my kind of view of it. So I'm having to go back to do maths and English. I'm on a long road to this. But the weird thing about sitting in the classroom, you feel those, again, the mask, you feel that old, I feel the younger me kind of terrified, worried about getting picked on, all that's still there. And I'm going, this is weird. I'm older. I can look after myself now, but you can feel that playing out. And you actually find sometimes, I think the lesson I'm kind of learning, as well as obviously maths and English, is I'm not as bad at it as I was told I was. And you find kind of going, yeah, that was easy. I thought that would be hard. So I think it's very important to make sure the perspective you have on something isn't somebody else's, that they've kind of sawed on to your psyche almost, to kind of, if that makes sense.
But that's it, as I said at the beginning, is that our experiences form our beliefs, and our beliefs form our behaviors. So if someone's told you that you're not good at something, you're going to believe that until there's enough of a kicker for you to go and try it. But again, that takes a lot of courage. Think how many people had horrendous school experiences and were told they were like awful at maths, and never even have this experience to also go back and relearn. I'm also a firm believer that often people who have had like really challenging moments or really hard things happen to them, like, you will be, I'm in no doubt anyway, but like, you'll be a phenomenal teacher, and you'll have an angle to you because of that experience that will transform people's lives. Like, genuinely, I can say that with confidence, because you'll bring like a level of empathy and understanding and genuine experience to support and make it better, and make the system better, and make the people better. And that's the same with people who have had like hard childhoods and how they parent, or people who are doctors or nurses. I don't know, just like, we can see those things all along. So first of all, I take my hat off to you that you were brave enough to kind of go back in, because that takes real guts, and acknowledge that, like, I can do this, and like, it's not that hard. So I'm going to encourage you to go and celebrate. I don't know, go and have something fun today.
It's been weird in a way, because I'll be honest, I tried to avoid having to take these steps. I was trying to go more to kind of like hop over them. But a lot of courses have changed now, and they're going, no, you need to go back, do that first before you come to us. And you're like, crap. So the other thing.
Yeah, but that's a good example. Like the push and the pull was enough because someone's pushed you and said you have to do it, and the pull of like the bigger thing is getting you through that. And then what's cool is that you're having the awareness as you go and updating yourself that, I'm more grown up than I was then, and like I have more wisdom and I have a deeper understanding of what's happening. And even just knowing like, maybe this is like my 14-year-old self reacting rather than me. Okay, don't worry, 14-year-old self, like you're okay, you're not back there. I'm me of today, I know how to do maths, I don't have, these horrible guys around me or whatever. Even that dialogue is going to change things for you. I'm kind of, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's weird. I think sometimes things happen to you and someone said to you, to come on, go, what was that all about? And you go, actually, I don't know. But it's funny enough, sometimes years later, you get perspective from somewhere else. You then look back at that and you go, I actually understand that now. I know what was happening. But at the time, you're kind of going, why am I acting like this? Why am I? It's kind of, because I did go back to education maybe 10 years ago, and it was, I don't think I was ready, and I found the old me kind of coming. I remember just going to myself, why am I getting on like this? Why am I acting that way? But it was just because I was putting up all this defensive walls. I was expecting the same treatment as I did in high school.
Of course, which was, you had no other thing to update it.
Yeah.
Like that makes total sense.
So kind of that made, going back now, has made me understand why because I kind of bailed out in the end, unfortunately. But I look back now and go, that's what was happening. That makes sense. And so yeah, I think sometimes perspective, you can't have it until someone's like, you're not going to get this for another couple of years yet.
Yeah.
And once you join the dots, someone's like your reward kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's like, again, just trusting, like things come when they're ready. Like I bet that the way that you're approaching it now and the mindset, the emotional, the physical, whatever it is state that you're in is ready for all of this. Like you're ready to handle it. Perhaps back then in that it just wasn't meant to be. Like this is your moment now, and it's not, you didn't do anything wrong. Like at least you gave it a try, and there's so much to learn. It's not about being unkind about that. It's about like, woohoo, we're here now. Like it was meant to be.
Yeah, no, I say thank you. It's definitely interesting. Keep me on my toes going back.
Yeah.
We're also near the end, and I I've still got a few questions, but I'll touch on one of the things. I think it's a good one. What is appreciate the small things?
So for me, almost kind of back in that celebratory thing, everything just seems so big. It was like, we only celebrate, things are like, everything's got to be massive. You've got to be at these big, I don't know, big part. This was back in the day before restrictions, but like, big parties or big career or big targets, big bonus. And everything felt big. And actually, when you slow things down, and this is tried and tested with anxious people, is that actually, as cheesy as it sounds, like the sunlight on your face is really amazing, or that flower is so beautiful. And if I hadn't have like slowed down and paused enough to be able to actually look at it or even notice that it was there, and kind of talking about that hamster wheel, I was always just going so fast that I never even was like, I really love that painting, or I don't know, like I walk in here every day and I don't really appreciate it. So yeah, slow down.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's nice. It's sometimes, for example, even it might sound mundane if you're sitting in a coffee shop on your own. As you say, or sitting outside, it's a nice day. Kind of switch off your own personal assistant in your head, saying you have this to do, you have that to do. What time is it? You just switch that off and just sit there, just kind of like, it's nice having coffee and just chilling.
Yeah. But it takes real willpower, doesn't it? Like even now I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably should get back to this, or I'm gonna scroll through this social media, or I'm gonna look busy. I couldn't possibly just look out the window for half an hour. Like people must think I'm mad. So yeah.
No, I think again it ties in with our modern side. We're very hard on ourselves, and we've kind of put a lot of, I suppose it's almost like having say like when we were 1 or 2 kids, you have like 50 children all going, I want this, you need this, you need that. You have like, right, I'll get to you in a minute. Like, what do you want? And that's what it's just going, hang on a second, just let me just enjoy this moment kind of thing. And I know, I think in Eastern philosophy, it's about being present and enjoying the moment right now and being kind of more, again, not an expert in this, so please correct me, that be more centered and be present in the moment. I'm going to ask one more question before we kind of wrap up, because I've seen this kind of popped up. Oh, yes, one. Getting this from the book. How do you create a future college or collads? And what is a future collads?
So I think when looking to the future, often people really struggle with defining what they want or where they're headed. And so it can be very hard to put the boundaries in or work out what you need today, or to kind of put the right friends in place, for example, if you're not really connected to where you're heading. And so the more clear, specific, and kind of tangible things that you can have to aim for, it just makes life easier. And then it's also like a way, obviously, to track and celebrate and be like, oh, well, this was my intention. I wanted to get here, whatever that means. And again, there's been like so many kind of experiences or stories of this. Like even Bruce Lee wrote himself a letter, I want to say, like, I don't know, I'm going to get this wrong, like 30 years in advance, saying you're going to be a Hollywood star and you're going to be earning tons of money and you're going to be, I don't know, super fit. I can't even remember what the letter says. But being really intentional about where he was heading was kind of important. And so the future collage is just, it's just one way to do that. It's kind of pulling together, people are often quite visual. And so pulling together like images or words and then creating them into like some sort of vision board or mood board, so that you've got, again, something like tangible. Like I did one for this year. I don't actually have, I should have it up on my desk. I'm not practicing what I preach, but maybe I'll put it up tomorrow. But like, you know, to put it by my desk, if I saw every morning that I was going to do X, Y, Z, actually, I would make different decisions, perhaps. I don't know. I'm going to put it up tomorrow. I feel bad now, but yeah.
Yeah, no, because I think that's really important. And you find if you're seeing more and more of that kind of from different kind of influencers, kind of recommend. Like almost like say create like a vision board. So like I have a friend I think he did that years ago. He created a vision board and he's reached that destination. He's living what he started. So it is really, I think it might sound kind of like thing you do with children, but I think it's really important us adults do the same thing. It's if anything, it's because remember hearing about Pele. Pele, these people watching like, who's Pele? He was a famous footballer for Brazil. He would go to the quiet part of the changing room and just lie down, put a towel over his head, and he would just visualize playing football back where he grew up. And then he would fast forward the vision to being out on the stadium where he was going to go, and then visualize scoring goals. And that got him really in that mindset, kind of like, this is what I'm here to do, and kind of connect it with his childhood dream of being this poor boy in Brazil and becoming a famous footballer. So I think it's a powerful tool. But again, it sounds obvious, but I think we don't take it serious enough.
Yeah, but you know, you look at the top sportsmen, you know, globally across all sports, and you know, the biggest part of what they do now is that physically most people can get to a level, but how do they like conduct themselves under pressure? And so much of the work that they do is now mental and emotional, and visualizing is such a big part of that, like scoring the goal, getting over the high jump, running over the finish line. Yeah, we should all be, I mean, why are they any different to us? We've got our own lives to try and win and get through.
No, definitely, that's great. Agi, thanks very much. I know we've kind of reached the end of our time. Just before we wrap up, again, we touched on the book Generation Panic, and again, I recommend people go back to episode 26, where we talked a lot of detail, like social media, how you dealt with tips on dealing with anxiety. how can people, again, get in touch with yourself, get the book?
So the book Generation Panic is in most places like Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, Book Depository. I've also recorded an audiobook, so that's available on Audible and Kindle and everything. Yeah, and feel free to get in touch. There's generationpanic.com website, and my name's Agi Heale. There's not many out there of me, so yeah, type in Agi and I'm sure I'll crop up somewhere, I think.
Before we go, again, we kind of we just touched on this, the irony of this. Any plans for this year then? So what's the plans for the year?
Celebrate. Do you know what? In all honesty, I was just talking about it with someone before I came on this call. Is that I hope that this year is going to feel like a real settling. I think it's been like a completely mental bonkers couple of years, and my hope or my wish is that things just kind of feel easy and simple and like content almost. So I mean, I've always got like little ideas popping in the background, but like with ease, with calm. So yeah, I'm excited.
Excellent. No, that's great. Again, Agi, thank you so much for coming on. It was great having you back. And again, happy New Year to yourself, and good luck for the year ahead.
You too. Thank you so much for having me back. It's been wonderful as always.
That's great. Thank you.